everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a show dedicated to all the amazing survivors across the world. My name's Gloria Masters and I'm your host. We have an amazing guest with us today, but before I introduce him to you, I'd just like to say that, as usual, we do have a trigger warning with the show. The content may disturb or it may trigger, so I would prefer you not to feel either of those things. And if that happens, please stop watching. Go to the show notes below and there's some guidance for resource and help. So welcome to Luke Wiersma. He is with us today. He's all the way from Indiana. He's an advocate against child sexual abuse. He's on the Leaderboard team and runs the meetings for survivors of child sexual abuse. He's a big advocate, and it's such a pleasure to have you with us. Luke, welcome.
Hi, Gloria. Nice to be here.
Great to meet you too, and thank you so much for joining us today, and always very welcome here, as survivors are. So Luke, it tends to be fairly organic. We have a conversation. You don't feel that anything that you're asked you have to answer if it feels uncomfortable, because guess what, this is all about survivor focus and survivor comfort. So, Luke, tell us as much or as little as you would like to about your childhood sexual abuse.
First off, I want to thank you for doing this. I feel like what you do is very important. Spreading the message. It's huge, my book. So I was 16 when it started. It was a female who was older. She was 22 or 23 at the time. She would start by playing us with alcohol and drugs. First, it was just alcohol. We're 16. We want to drink, have a good time. Why not? And we didn't think anything of it. And it went on about 4 or 5 weeks, maybe, before it became, I'll give you liquor or drugs for sex. Eventually that became, we would get too messed up, as drug addicts do. And then she would hold us down and force us to have sex with her. I remember some details. I remember banging, like someone was banging on something. I'm not 100% clear on those details, but I remember those. The fear.
Yeah.
Her wanting to get off of me, like me wanting to get her away from me, wanting just to go home.
Yeah. It sounds like, Luke, from what you're saying, that it wasn't just you, that you say we, were there a few of you there?
There were other victims. I'm not I really want to go into their story.
No, you
I don't
can't.
know what happened
No.
to them. Yeah, I don't know what happened to either of those guys.
No. The only reason I'm checking that with you is because I just wanted to make sure I've heard correctly. So
Right.
for you, you know, Luke, that is specific grooming and targeting and entrapment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she was very smart. I will give her that. Said sad to say, but we didn't know her full name, we didn't know her last name, barely knew anything about her. She was kind of friends with the one of the guys, and I don't know the whole backstory behind that, but she was kind of friends, I guess, with one of the guys, and we didn't know where she lived, so it was like if we reported it, nothing would have happened. So we don't know who she is. She's just a ghost. Um, but also, there's that fear of reporting it and, shame.
Yeah. Was this all happening at someone's house, or was it out in a different place? I mean, I'm just trying to get a picture here with the.
Oh, so it was in a public park, uh, in a bathroom. Usually it happened during the winter, so like nobody was in the park, or it happened at night during the summer. So nobody was in the park. So no one was around other than the other victims who felt helpless, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And no one could help us.
No. And look, I understand, you've mentioned fear, and fear, I don't think sometimes that survivors always recognize that one of the biggest triggers for us when we're traumatized is it's that fear response. It's the fear that kicks in. And Luke, for someone like me, I'll freeze. That's what fear does to me. What, any idea what your response was? They say it can be fight, flight, freeze.
I was more than one. It was more than one.
Yeah,
At first, it was fight.
yeah,
And then once, because she was heavier than me. Once I couldn't get her off of her,
yeah,
just kind of froze and just I'm trying to think what that word is. Disassociated
yeah,
from it.
yeah. Well, you mind, for those, oh, hello, lovely survivors watching. And Luke, thank you, because you're going to be helping a lot of men out there who maybe haven't been able to speak out about their own story of abuse by a woman. And we know that the shame can feel even greater, even though we know it shouldn't. The fact is, it feels so big. So, again, really appreciate you sharing with us. The the fact that she was older, she knew exactly what she was doing. Um, how long would you say that went on? Are we talking a series of months or
It was a series of years. So
series of?
this continued until my 18th birthday.
Okay.
Um, and then it stopped at my 18th birthday. It stopped, and I never could really figure that out for the longest time. And once I started talking to other survivors and actually focusing on trying to heal is when I really figured out it was probably because I aged out. I just got too old for her. I didn't turn her on anymore. So, um, and
Yeah.
that, in a way, that kind of hurts you emotionally too, because you feel that rejection,
Yeah.
even though it's from someone that's abusing you. You feel rejection. Um,
I
and
understand. I think that's a really good point that you raised, Luke. I think that's something that we don't often talk about, and I think it's really valid. So, the fact that even though we don't want the abuse, we never asked for it, the fact that it continued to happen and then suddenly there was someone or others who were more appealing because you were too old, or for survivors watching, it may have been that you started to look different as you got older. Uh, the point is, it's very common to feel a sense of rejection, or that, what have I done? Or, is it my fault somehow? Even though you don't want it, it's that feeling, isn't it, where you don't actually want it to happen, but if the attention is moved away from you, that also can be very hard as well.
It leads to a lot of confusing feelings. And then on top of that, she would make us, to put it politely, she would make us perform sex acts on each other. We're all males.
Yeah.
Um, so it makes it confusing as well because you know, now you're confused about your own sexuality too.
Yeah. And that's just such classic predatory behavior. And when you think about it, now that you've got some distance from that time and place, Luke, you can see that real targeting, grooming, abusing behavior was very, very, very deliberate. What do you
Yeah,
want that?
I would say it was deliberate. It was very, she knew what she was doing. And my fear, because she never got caught, um, she's still out there, is that she's doing this to others. You know,
Have you thought about taking that further to law
I
enforcement?
have,
You have.
I've actually done it, and they didn't do anything.
What was their response to you?
I mean, it was the typical police response. They send you to stuff for people, for victims. So like the whole process of what you're going to have to go through, which kind of confused me because when I reported it, it was many years after the fact. And I was like, there's no evidence, so you can't, if you do a rape kit, there's nothing there. I've already showered multiple times since. There's nothing physical on me. Um, she, like I said, she was very smart in how she did it and very deliberate in how she did it in a way that she wasn't going to get caught. And she knew she wasn't going to get caught.
Or she tricked you or manipulated you into thinking that the drugs and the alcohol were payment in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I mean, I think about it now, it was prostitution in a sense,
Yeah,
or well, exploitation.
yeah. Uh, you know, the fact is that her behavior won't have changed. Um, so, I guess I don't know. I'm a bit surprised that they're saying they can't, you know, they're not taking further action on it because,
They haven't said they won't do it, but they just haven't done anything.
yeah. Are you still in the area, or have you moved away?
I've moved. So this happened in Illinois. So I've since moved to Indiana.
Yeah. Good. What about your kind of parents or family at the time, Luke? Did they notice anything had changed with you, or you weren't the same kid?
I'm sure they did. Um, it wasn't uh, it wasn't until years after the fact that I told my mom,
Yeah.
and her initial response was uh, she didn't want to believe it. Like it was hard for her to take it all in,
Yeah.
I guess. And I told her again, and she cried. But during that time, I was on a lot of drugs. I was at that by the time I was 18, I was on heroin real bad. So I'm sure my appearance changed. Everything I did, yeah, it changed. My attitude toward life had changed. I know that. I just didn't care.
No.
At that point, I didn't care about life or living.
Yeah.
I just wanted, honestly, I just wanted to die.
Yeah. Of course. And look, Luke, I'm so glad that you are with us today.
I am too.
Just sending love to you. The you know, looking at your mum's response, of course, she would have gone into shock and then just felt devastated that that happened to her beautiful son. And I guess for you, you had the double whammy of actually finding the courage to even share it, let alone to have the very first time be told that she couldn't believe it. So I'm glad that you were able to bring it up again with her and actually have her accept the truth. That's big. Yeah.
It is. And it meant a lot that she was able to. Um, I know some people, they don't have parents that do, or
Yeah.
whatever their situation is, but to those people, I'd say it's about you accepting you as well for who you are.
Yeah. Well, we know that children don't tend to speak of this. They very rarely will speak out because of what you've just said. People don't believe, and because they don't believe, it's almost impossible then to have a child or a teenage survivor ever say anything, let alone as an adult. So for you, were you able to withdraw from the drugs okay? Were you able to get some help with that?
Yeah. So I got clean off of heroin at 19. So I've been off of heroin about a little over, well, about 20 years, I'd say.
Well,
I was on other drugs still. I got clean off of those when I was incarcerated. Uh, so yeah, I'm clean off of everything now. Uh,
congratulations, Luke. That's a big, that's big commitment and takes a lot of determined dedication. And so I congratulate you. That's really difficult, hard journey. And
it's,
yeah, the addiction rates, or we know that rehabs across the world over 85% of them are full of people like you and I who have experienced child sexual abuse. So that's got to tell us something, doesn't it?
It does. The abuse itself leaves scars so deep. Even if it just happens once, those scars are a lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's something the abusers will never understand is they think it's just one little thing, but to us it's the end of the world we knew, but it's the beginning of a lot of different stuff.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I had a police detective on the show recently, and she was talking about, murders one and done. Child sexual abuse casts a shadow the length of a lifetime. And I think, for survivors watching, they'll so be able to relate, because we can't guarantee that tomorrow we might get triggered by something, which takes us straight back to the memory. So, Luke, I'm just as we're looking at closing out the first part of the interview. You're doing great, by the way.
Thank you.
Is there anything you would like to share about that first part of your life, where you may have had an adult who that she did notice something wasn't quite right, or tried to ask if anything was wrong, or...
There were teachers that were concerned.
Okay. Yeah.
They didn't ask questions, but I know they were definitely disturbed by the amount of drugs I was using. They knew I was using drugs. Um, but they never really asked questions. I don't know. I kind of wish they had, but I feel like even though I wish that, um, would I have had the courage to tell them is the thing. Um, Even then, my voice is louder now. My voice is speaking louder now than it would have then.
Mm.
I was more
So,
afraid then.
well, you're a child, and children don't have power. There's a reason that in most developed countries, a child is not considered an adult until they are 18. So there's no way you can really fully understand what happens. Now you can, because you can look back and see it all. But Luke, don't go anywhere, please. Just stay there. I'm just going to close out part one with our amazing audience, and stay there. So, audience, really interesting having Luke with us today. He's bringing up things that I think are really useful for all of us to make sense of, and sometimes I think, for instance, one of them is that, for boys being abused by women is unfortunately not always seen or respected in the way that it would be if the tables were turned. So if you have a teenage girl that's abused by an older man, that's outrageous and people are up in arms. But for brave young teenagers like Luke was, it's not actually seen as that. And we've got to stand up strongly in support of that. So I think that's a really interesting thought to consider. And the other is that, even as Luke said, even though the abuse stopped, the day he was 18, it didn't happen to him again. the repercussions and the impact of it was to carry on for the rest of his life up till now. So, as always, beautiful ones, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.